Back a number of shows ago, I introduced you to my brew bench. Now, this brew bench has been a wonderful brew bench for me for many years, but of course, I can't leave it well enough alone. So I've decided I'm going to upgrade the brew bench to a HERMS unit. Now, you may be asking me, what was my reason for picking a HERMS? Well, here it is. There's kind of two different systems. I know there's variations on both of them and they all have their little differences, but basically two systems, a RIM system and a HERMS system. A RIM system, which stands for Recirculated Infusion Mash System, has a cylinder or a container, basically, that has an electric heating unit, kind of like what's used in a hot water heater. And at the other end, it's got a probe with a temperature sensor to let us know what it's doing, and an inlet and an outlet area so that we can take the mash liquid out of our mash tun and keep circulating that so that we can get our temperature set so precise that basically we can stay right at the correct temperature. And of course, that's really important. Well, a HERMS unit works basically the same way. The only thing is, with a HERMS unit, you have a heat exchange RIM system. You have a heat exchanger that your wort flows through, and you have an outside liquid that heats this coil of copper, in our case, and it circulates back. Same idea, we're going to keep the mash at a very consistent temperature. Now, are these systems worth it? You know, I got to be honest with you. I have no clue. And I've read a great deal about both systems, and what I keep hearing is, yes, they'll keep the temperature very, very controlled. But with most systems, such as this one, I only lose a degree or two over a period of time, so how much better is my brew going to be? Well, we're going to find out. But let's talk about the HERMS unit that I'm going to build. Now, you may be asking me, why did I pick a HERMS unit? It's really simple. It was the least expensive of the two to do. Are there benefits of one over the other? Well, some people say with a RIMS unit, you might end up hurting the wort as if it goes too slowly past the heating element and it caramelizes it a bit, scorching your wort. Can't happen with a HERMS unit. But I also didn't want to have to go out and buy all the components to put together a RIMS unit. Probably would cost me $200–300. I wanted to do it cheaper, and I was able to. All right, I already have a pump. That's the center of any of these systems. I had to have a pump to be able to circulate that wort. And you've heard me more than once say, I really did not like the use of an immersion chiller to cool my wort, especially after I got a plate chiller. But I had the old coils lying around. I'm going to use these as my heat exchanger through my hot liquor tank. So, didn't cost me any more because I already had it. Now I've got a couple pieces of equipment to hold things together. Here, take a look. So out of the shop, we've got some nuts and bolts. We've got a piece of square aluminum tubing that was just some scrap lying around. We also have a little piece of aluminum again that I have slotted, so that'll hold the tubes. And a couple washers that I made up, and you'll notice the edge of this washer is bent past 90 degrees, and you'll see why in a minute. I also needed a couple fittings, which my hardware store had, a little extra tubing, and now we're going to put the HERMS together. So this is my bracket to be able to hold the tubing safely in the hot liquor tank. This is my temperature gauge in my hot liquor tank. And I got to be careful because I don't want the coil bouncing around on top of that. I want to put my coils just above that probe that you can see shining in the bottom of the tank. So with the frame, we just set it right down on top of the keg. Now here's the trick pouring. Remember those washers I told you about that had that bent edge? It fits underneath the rim inside and supports it, doesn't allow it to move. So now the entire heat exchange unit is securely fastened to our hot liquor tank. And hey, come here, take a look at how the washers work. So here's our securing washer. The bent part is up under this lip. So this can't go anywhere, and it's going to be a nice secure design. Plus, it'll be easy to take on and off when I want. All right, we now have our HERMS system all plumbed in. So let me go through it with you. It's really simple. We have our wort that we're wanting to keep a consistent temperature. Out our mash tun to our pump. From our pump, which we're regulating the amount of flow, we run right up into the copper tubing down into our hot liquor tank. So from that, we're going to be creating the heat, comes back out and back into the mash tun. Now it's going to be a slow flow because I don't want to have any big flurries in going on here. It's going to sit, just flow nicely. Now one of the advantages I see we're going to have is we're probably going to get this grain bed to sit nicely. So we're going to have a nice clear flow, which I normally run it before I put it into the boil kettle. I want to flow it a little bit so that the grain sets and it doesn't have particles. But with this system, I'm not going to have that problem. So, notice the other pump. I'm taking hot water out of the hot liquor tank and pumping it right back into it around the coils. That keeps adding that movement of water by the coils, which is going to help with our heat exchange. So here's also how I'm going to calibrate my system. This temperature gauge is what I'm going to use as my spot to be able to say, yes, my temperature is where I want it. But it may not be the temperature that this is necessarily reading. I'm going to need to take a temperature of the wort coming out of the end of my line that goes back onto the bed. And that's the temperature where I'm going to take a measurement. And I'm going to see what the difference is between this gauge and the gauge I use to measure the outflow of the wort. So let's just say that with this measuring at 158 degrees, and I want 150 degree coming here, and that's what it measures flowing out, I know now that as long as this is at 158, I have 150 degree temperature wort flowing back in. And I'll do that for all the different temperature ranges that I will be changing for the type of beer I'm brewing. So, what do you think?